On New Year's Day, 1916, the County Armagh-based newspaper, the Portadown News, carried on its front page a letter from George Jackson, a sergeant in the Royal Irish Fusiliers. Writing from France, the sergeant said that just a few weeks ago, on the 16th of December, he and his men of B Company held a Christmas concert at the front line in France. During this surreal concert, Private Harry Holmes from Portadown gave a fine rendering of The Turfman from Ardee. Sadly, on July 1st, 1916, 27-year-old Harry Holmes, badge number 14250, was one of the many who was killed at the Somme. It seems that The Turfman from Ardee, a County Louth classic, was a relatively recent composition. All 7 verses were published, it appears for the first time, on Saturday, the 2nd of November, 1895, on page 6 of the Drogheda, Argus and Leinster Leader. It was common practice in those days for newspapers to include either the writer's actual name or his or her nom de plume at the end of the submitted poem. But in this case, only the writer's initials were published. J. McC. Perhaps J. McC was a nom de plume used by 69-year-old John Costello, then editor of the Drogheda Argus. Costello, originally from Tuam, County Galway, had been editor of the paper since 1861. An ardent and outspoken nationalist, Costello was also known for his wit and humour, which is more than evident in his numerous ballads, such as Bellewstown Hill, his ballad about the fair held in Bellewstown, County Meath. The Turfman from Ardee tells the story of a man walking along a country road in County Louth, and while out on his rambles, he meets a man ambling alongside his donkey and cart, which is laden with a stack of good turf. He stops to chat with the turfman, who tells him that his donkey's name is Jack, and that the harness on old Jack's back was of the highest quality, because it was made by the one and only John McGee, master harness maker. Though his cart has seen better days, says the turfman, the axle is as reliable as the day it was bought, from the cartman up in Carrick. When the conversation turns to politics, the turfman declares that he simply does not trust those Irish politicians who had chosen to follow those blooming humbugs in the British Parliament, most of whom, he added, did nothing to redress the wrongs inflicted on the oppressed people of Ireland. It's not known who added music to the ballad, which was clearly gaining a foothold in areas which are generally described today as the border counties. On the 8th of January 1908, for example, it was sung at a concert held at the National School in Julianstown, County Meath. And in October 1911, John Jones donned the guise of a turfman to sing it at a concert in the Foresters' Hall in Eden Street, Enniskillen, the event organised by the Irish National Foresters Society. Singer and fiddle player John McGettigan was probably the first to render The Turfman from Ardee to disc. Born in Donegal in 1882, McGettigan emigrated to Philadelphia, where he formed the Irish Minstrels, a pioneering group of musicians who did much to popularise the Irish ballads we know and love today. John and his band recorded J. McC's song for the Rex label in 1934, and it was later released by Decca. By 1938, the record was available to buy at Davis's Music Shop in Great James's Street, Derry. What is noticeable from the McGettigan version, and indeed later versions, is that the sixth verse, the one in which the Turfman criticises politicians, is omitted. It's also interesting to note that McGettigan uses a speeded-up version of the melody that is used in the old famine ballad, Skibbereen.
For the sake of health I took a walk one morn at early dawn. I met the jovial turfman on the road as I went on. A friendly conversation passed between that man and me, till I became acquainted with the turfman from Ardee.
In early February 1952, John Finlay from Railway Street in Navan asked the Drogheda Independent to publish the words of the ballad. Complying with the request, the editor published the verses on the 23rd of February and paid a glowing tribute to the two readers who provided them, namely Michael Rowe from Glack in Ardee and Robert A. Costello from Belvedere Place in Dublin. However, Patrick Slevin, a keen-eyed reader from Woodtown in Ardee, noticed that the sixth verse was conspicuous by its absence. Having received the missing verse from Slevin, the editor decided to throw caution to the wind and published it the following week. 4 years later, The Turfman from Ardee was one of 12 tracks included on Songs of an Irish Tinker Lady, a seminal album by Cork's own Margaret Barry. And in 1971, it was recorded for the Release label by Dermot O'Brien, the singer and accordionist who hailed from the place where it all began, Ardee. Like the McGettigan version, the sixth verse was not included in those recorded by Margaret Barry or indeed by Dermot O'Brien. And so ends the story behind J. McC's bouncing ballad, The Turfman from Ardee. For the sake of health I took a walk last week at early dawn. I met a jolly turfman as I slowly went along. The kindest salutations were exchanged between him and me, and soon I got acquainted with the turfman from Ardee. We chatted very freely as we jogged along the road. He said, my ass is tired and I want to sell my load. I have got no refreshment since I left home, you see, and I'm wearied out with the travelling, said the turfman from Ardee. Your cart is wrecked and worn, dear friend, your ass is very old. It must be 20 summers since that animal was foaled. Yoked in a trap when I was born in September 43. I cantered for the midwife, said the turfman from Ardee. This old cart of mine, it must have been made of the best of wood, and I do believe it was in use at the time of Noah's flood. The axe diesel never wanted grease, save 1 year out of 3. For it's a real old carrick axle, said the turfman from Ardee. I have often abused that beast with this rough hazel rod, although I own I never yet did drive poor Jack unshod. The harness now upon his back 'twas made by John McGee. I's dead this 22 years, said the turfman from Ardee. So we talked about our country's woes and how we were oppressed, and the men we sent to Parliament to have our wrongs redressed. I place no faith in members now, they're nothing else I see, but they're led by bloomin' humbugs, said the turfman from Ardee. Just then a female voice I heard that I knew very well, politely asking this good man his load of turf to sell. I shook that steely hand of his, then bowed respectfully, in hopes to meet some future day the turfman from Ardee.